Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Greetings to you. Well, you know, in pop psychology, we always hear the term, you can't change other people, you can only change yourself. Well, I have two authors, co-authors of the book, You Can Change Other People. I repeat, you can, underscored, highlighted, change other people. They are providing us with 4 steps to do just that. So I am very pleased to introduce to you Peter Bregman and Howie Jacobson, Dr. Howie Jacobson, co-authors of You Can Change Other People, both superior executive coaches. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here with you, Dr. Duffy.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter and Howie. Well, Peter Bregman and Howie Jacobson. I will be repeating your last names, even if I use your first names informally. So this goes against all the popular understandings. And you make the comment about people don't want to be changed. People kind of want to change from the inside out for themselves. You know, we're all in the business of need fulfillment. And this is what motivates all human beings, is getting their needs met. So you are looking into, I think, what people really want and need for themselves. Would you agree with that statement, that we're all in the business of need fulfillment as a primary motivator? Howie?
Yeah.
Peter? Go ahead.
I think it's a great framing, and I'll share with you sort of some of the fundamentals of Howie's and my approach, which is, it is true that we all want to fulfill our needs. The mistake we make is expecting that you will want to fulfill my needs as much as I want to fulfill my needs. Yes. So I'm going to try to change you so you become a need fulfiller for me. And what that misses is you have your own needs. And if I'm only in it for myself, then you're going to experience me trying to change you in order to meet my needs, and you're going to resist that. But of course, we're always in relationships where we're mutually trying to support each other and meeting our needs. And so there's a better way to do it that actually works.
Well, I know so many cases. Besides being a management trainer, I am also a psychotherapist. So I'm very pleased that you two cover personal and work lives. And I have scenarios in my own practice with my own patients where, you know, there's such an incredible clash. So I'm thinking of the most obvious. If you're a manager, you're supposed to be a change manager, and you're supposed to get people to do a better job and to perform well according to the dictates of the company, of the organization. And then there's all kinds of passive and active resistance to that. Not always, of course. So is that a fair enough question? In the workplace, what a manager's job, they're always told you're supposed to be a change manager and you're supposed to improve other people's performance.
Right. Well, I like to think of it, let's continue that lovely framing of sort of need fulfillment. So typically you're asked to produce an outcome, right? To produce some deliverable, and it's a deliverable that's not yet being achieved. So that's the difference between sort of maintenance and sort of the leadership aspect of management. Let's go somewhere new. Let's grow, let's evolve. And, for a lot of people, a need is to grow, evolve, continually challenge themselves. So they don't necessarily, even if things are fine, we have this urge to let's make it better. So I think that's a beautiful framing. And the other thing, though, is that very often we have hierarchies of needs. So I don't have a single need. I have the need to be a high performer. I have the need to be well compensated. I also have the need in this moment to be right, to defend myself against a slight, to deal with in some way a past trauma that's being triggered in this moment. So I think when we think about from high level what our needs are, we would tend to choose the positive, growth-oriented ones. But in the heat of the moment, it's very easy, especially if we feel unsafe, especially if we feel like someone else is trying to impose their agenda upon us, to drop down to sort of immediate defense ego needs that even when they're fulfilled, they don't leave us feeling much better. So I think, the job of the manager or of anyone in this scenario to change other people is to create an environment of safety so that people can seek the higher positive needs and prioritize those.
So true. So well said. I'm thinking about Peter Senge, the learning environment, which was so popular 20 years ago, and how much we understand that this is the healthy way for people to learn, where they feel safe. And I'm thinking about the corporate culture, loosely called CYA, cover your ass, which is really covering your assets. Because when people are trying to cover their ass, they're really covering their assets because they're living in fear and they cannot be creative or learn when they're afraid. So this is a lot to get out from under. Peter and Howie, it's a lot to get out from under. I'm also thinking about, this is a long time ago, but Theory X and Theory Y were so popular in the management world. Theory X, you need the stick that people don't want to work. You have to make them work. Theory Y, oh yes, people want to learn and grow and be challenged, and you just need to help them, guide them, support them in that. So I love your book. I think it's extraordinarily optimistic, and you go through really very practical steps. So rather than I don't mean to be a skeptic. I just know what we're up against. And you talk about triggering past trauma. You talk about ego needs. You use the term drop down. I never heard that term. Do you mean moving into your primitive brain when you say that? Like the gut has an instant trigger reaction?
I think that we're multi-leveled, multi-layered. So, we know we have these different parts of the brain and they get differently prioritized. And I think our goal, I don't necessarily know the neuroscience and can't really speak as an expert on that, but just as a human being who has experienced all these different states myself and initiated and triggered them, consciously and unintentionally in others, I think what we want to try to do in relationships, and when we're not, neither of us is a therapist, but what we want to do is to empathize with people, to guide them towards what they want, towards the positive, and then help them figure out how to get there.
Right. Well, one of my patients is a young man, 21 years old, whose father is so overbearing to him and who wants him to be a doctor like he is, and in a certain way a doctor. And he is totally resisting. He has no motivation. He does want to be a doctor, but on his terms. He wants a more balanced life. And the father really believes that by pushing his son, he's helping his son be better. And he's angry with his wife, who's not pushing his son, and calls her an enabler. Because at this point, the environment is so toxic that she just wants to leave him alone. He's actually having panic attacks. And so he says, leaving him alone, that means nothing. You're not helping him. And yet trying to force someone is a whole other story. So I'm giving you a real case scenario, which
a great case.
Good, Peter. It's not easy to deal with. Well, what have you? What do you think, Peter?
So here's there's two ways of taking this, right? One from the father's perspective, and the other from the son's perspective. So your patient is the son, right? So let's talk about it from the son's perspective. So here the father is trying to change the son, right? And wants him to be a doctor. The son also wants to change the father, right? Let's just say the need of a son is to have a loving, connected relationship with his father. That's the goal, right? What's happening is the father's coming at him. What he's doing is resisting with equal amount of force, right? Which then incites the father to spiral up. And now they're in this sort of upward spiral of resentment, anger, frustration, and pushiness, right?
Right.
So let's just say that's probably not the perfect outcome, right? Like that's what's happening now, but it's not the outcome that we're going for. So, what's the outcome we're going for? And possibly the outcome from the son's perspective is to have this loving relationship with his father, and on a practical level, to not be so pressured and pushed.
Right.
On the father's perspective, this is what's really important. What is the need of the father, right? And what I would suggest to you is that the need of the father is not that his son become a doctor. The need of the father is that the son listen to the father, respect the father, and feel heard by the son. That's what he's actually going for. I mean, maybe he absolutely needs the son to be a doctor, but chances are, from what I know about these familial relationships, it's much more about being seen, heard, and connected. So if that's the need of the father, then what the son is doing, which is fighting off the father in order to maintain his independence, is doing the exact opposite. It's helping the father feel not heard. And so the father is going to double down on his effort, and it's going to create this problem. So what would we suggest in this moment? We would suggest, what we talk about in the book is to go from critic to ally. Right now, they're both critics of each other. Someone's got to make the first move. Your patient is the son. So what we would suggest to this young man is to be an ally of the father. Right now, that's really, really hard. We're not telling the son, your father raised you. He gave you all this money. He supported you. Just be a doctor. Right? We're not saying that. Right. And by the way, it's a little hard not to say that because I'm a Jewish father, and like maybe all of my kids should be doctors. But that's not the approach. Right. I'm really aligning with this 21-year-old. And I would say for the 21-year-old to be an ally to the father, the best thing he can do is help the father feel heard and feel seen. So this is very hard for him, but recognize it's his choice in the end. He's 21 years old. He can move out. It's his choice in the end. And at this point, for him to say to the father, it feels like it's really important to you that I be a doctor. I want to hear more about that because what's important to you is important to me. So I want to hear more about that. Like, talk to me a little bit about why it's important and let me really fully express to you how much I hear you, like that I understand that. And I'm not going to fight back, and I'm not going to say, I know you want me to be successful, but I can be successful as an entrepreneur selling, high profile sneakers, right? That you're not arguing in that moment with him. All you're doing is you're listening, you're repeating back what you hear, you're recapping what you hear, and you're maybe asking clarifying, open-ended questions, right? And the only goal of the conversation, that first conversation, is to have the father relax his shoulders, to look at the son lovingly and say, or not lovingly, but say, you get it. You understand what's going through for me. And then the son can say, great, thanks, and stop it there. Then there's other steps. But at this point, you're going to detox the situation tremendously.
Beautiful, beautiful. The son does want to be a doctor, but I think the need, to be seen and heard, because the father is one of these go-getters, very, energetic, early to bed, early to rise. And the son has a very slow-paced, different physiognomy. And the father knew what worked for him. And he wants the same success formula for his son, who has a very different approach. So I can say in your words, Peter, that I know that it's important for you that I become a doctor, and that you want me to do the success formula that you did, which is be very diligent, do nothing but study, and that's the best way, that's the best route, especially in this competitive environment, to get to do that. But I don't feel that competitive, and I have a different pacing, literally in my own body.
Let me interrupt you here for a sec, which is the first part was great. I wouldn't do the second part. So you're advocating for your patient, which makes total sense because you should as
yes, yes.
What I'm saying is he doesn't need to advocate for himself at this moment. All he needs to do is to express to his father that he loves his father, that he understands his father, that he hears what his father's saying. But he can't just do it by saying, I hear you, Dad. I hear you, Dad. But my physiology is different. What that communicates to the dad is, oh, you haven't heard me. Right? Everything before but is seen as heard as a loss. Right?
Yes.
And so what we want to do is we want to say, like, and by the way, even as you expressed it, if I'm the dad, I feel an objection coming up. I feel myself saying, hold on, I'm not saying just only study, but study a little more than you're studying, right? I mean, God forbid you turn off TikTok for 10 minutes. So I don't want that dynamic. So I want to, and I think this will be incredibly good for the son's physiology, to take out every ounce of judgment that the son has over the father, right? Yeah. Because it's defensive, right? And instead to be able to say, Dad, I love you. And what you care about is important to me. And I see how successful you've been. So I do, I don't know what decisions I'm going to make, but I do really want to make sure that I hear you and understand your perspective. And we could role play this, Dr. Duffy, if you want, like where you could be the father and I could show you, how I would approach it with the son. Actually, you want to do that? Would that be fun?
Sure, of course.
Great. So why don't you be, so I've just said, Dad, I understand. You be the dad.
I'm going to be the dad. You're not doing anything. You lie around in bed all day and you're lazy and you're never going to succeed in life and you're disrespectful.
Dad, I hear what you're saying. It makes me sad to hear that. What I'm hearing is that you feel like I'm lazy and I'm disrespectful and I just lie around all day. I hear that that's how you're feeling. Tell me what's important to you. I really care. I love you. And I really care, obviously as your son, but also because I respect you. And I know it doesn't seem like that sometimes, in my behavior. And I realize there's things I do that sort of I protect myself and that shows up in a disrespectful way. And I'm sorry about that because it's not, I don't disrespect you. I respect you. I want to hear a little more about what do you want for me? What's important to you?
Well, I love you too. And I want you to succeed. I want you to be a doctor. I want you to be the best doctor. And I think you're very capable of being a doctor if you would just study. Students study. Get it?
Yeah. So you want me to be a doctor. I want that too. And you see me not studying. And it sounds like what you really like to be students study. And it's hard for you and frustrating to see me not studying in the way that it feels like I should be studying and that maybe you studied when you were at my age and in my stage.
Yes. It's very hard for me to see this because I cannot fathom how you can be successful. You are so 1,000% different from me. And I am right. I know how to do it. I did it. I have a proven track record. I can help you. And you're even refusing my help. And that makes me feel very disrespected.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm sorry that, I hear that that you feel disrespected because I'm not doing things the way you did them. And also the way you did them did work really well. I mean, you're a very successful doctor. You have a very successful practice. You've, achieved a tremendous amount. And I see that and I respect that. So Dad, I love you. And I really, I'm so happy we've had this conversation because it feels different than the previous conversations that we've had. And I take seriously what you say. And I just, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Wow. So I didn't mean to go into an example per se. It just flipped into my mind, and as I was reading your book, thinking about this particular patient, and I want you to get a chance to share what you've written in the book. And I think the best way to do that is to look at what you just did, Peter, which is a lot of respect and empathy, a lot of paraphrasing, a lot of validating and affirming and repeating the love message. And as you said, even with me being the patient and the son and looking to explain myself, that I can see how that would be a defensive gesture, because I'm talking about me and my needs and my physiology. And it's hard, isn't it, to stay with the other person when the first thing is us that we're aware of.
If I could say what I saw there.
Of course, Howie. Yes,
like
please.
The thing that Peter did, and I'm glad he did it and I didn't. Because like what he really did was what he didn't do, which was he never gave you anything to fight about. Like, so just like it's almost like this kind of verbal Tai Chi where, it's like you're trying to push the wind. Right. All Peter was doing was saying, I hear you. And to a degree, what he did, if we like look at the transcript, like anyone could do it. So simple. I hear you. I understand you. And yet my experience when Peter was doing it was, God, this is hard.
Yeah.
I wanted to advocate for the son. I wanted to say, Dad, back off. Right?
Yeah.
Like, whatever in that scenario reminded me of relationships in my life. Like I could just feel the energy bubbling up. And so I think, one of the main ingredients in this work is self-work first. Like, Peter is not the son, so he had a little bit of space and background. But if he
I was like this when I was 21 years old. I was like this exactly when I was 21 years old. Trust me. No, can I just share? I remember a moment when I was not 21. I was younger. I was like 16, and I was, in massive fights with my parents. And I remember so specific. I must have been 15 or 16, and I was in the backseat of our car, and my parents were in the front, and my mother was crying about something, and she was like, "What?" I might have been younger too. Like, why do you fight so much? Why do you make my life so hard? Why do you make my life so hard? And I sat there and I was like, why do I? Like, I actually am old enough that, I wasn't that old, right? But I'm old enough that I can make my own choices. So why am I fighting for her to approve of my choices? Like, why am I fighting? Like, I'm fighting her. And like, why? I could just make life nice for her and I could do whatever I want to do. Right. And I'm not saying that I did that. Like at 21, I would have been fighting, I'm sure I still fought her. But, a few years later, of course, I'm 29 now. Nobody can see because this is radio. No, but in my 50s, like I can have more presence. And so does Howie. But when Howie talks about dropping in, that's what he's talking about. You asked earlier in the show, what does he mean by dropping in? It's like you sort of drop in and you go, okay, breathe, reconnect with myself. Yeah. What's the truth here?
Right. Beautiful. And that is a very important point that you two make, which is examine your own intentions. What are my motives? What am I trying to do? And is it really about me rather than about the client or the student or the report or the family member? And this is really a very high level of altruism. I do think human beings are capable of this if we have enough self-support, if we're supported ourselves. So what do you say to that, the whole idea of self-awareness, checking out your own intentions, and what are they? And what if a manager is just saying, I don't care. I just want you to do the work so that I don't get fired, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, you talked about altruism, and I think that there's a circle between altruism and selfishness. And I can't remember, it might have been the Dalai Lama who said, like, if you really want to be happy, if you just are concerned about your own happiness, then help other people. Right.
Right.
So that, for me, checking in with my intentions and doing the dropping in is like when I get in the car, setting a GPS destination. Right. I can just go, it's easy for me to get in the car and just drive. Like, driving is fun. If I'm upset that day, I can put my foot down heavier on the gas pedal and be aggressive. But taking the time to decide, where do I want to go today? What's going to give me meaning and joy? And so when we're working with other people, especially in an organizational setting, it's not just, is it me or them? There's usually a shared goal. And to be able to have us both articulate it and focus on it, because when we're in the middle of a problem or a conflict, like, all I want is for it to go away. Mm-hmm. And I don't care how it goes away. I could, I could make the problem go away by storming out of the house, getting in my car and just driving. Right. That'll make sense. Right. But to say, but is that what I want? To be separate, or do I want to be connected, loving, respectful? Well, that's going to call for a different set of strategies.
Yes, and none of us is an expert in neurophysiology, but we do have a 3-part brain, and 2/3 of it is primitive. Then we have our prefrontal lobe, which would help the person say, "I'm going to stay, and I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to talk this out." But I know you have plenty of good examples where people feel seen and heard, and they do want to change in a positive direction for themselves. And I have to say, Peter Bregman and Dr. Howie Jacobson, wow, authors of You Can Change Other People, the 4 steps to help your colleagues, employees, even family, and I use the expression, up their game. So I'm so glad I invited you to come back next week, because obviously we're in the thick of it, and there's so much more to process here. There's so much more to teach and help people understand. And your book is available everywhere, right? You Can Change Other People, Peter Bregman and Howie Jacobson, readily available. Yes?
Absolutely.
Pretty much.
Yes,
Dr. Duffy, it's been delightful to be with you. I'm excited that we get to come back next week.
Oh, I'm so delighted to, Peter. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I look forward to speaking to you next week. Okay.
Thanks.
And this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.